The following video is part of a 4-part series in helping you get set up with chickens. Part 1 will cover your breed selections. Part 2 will go into getting set up for your chickens once you've got them home. Part 3 will be covering your general care and maintenance. And Part 4 will go a little more in depth on illnesses and parasite identification. If you're finding this video earlier and all 4 of them haven't been posted, please hit like and subscribe, and you'll get notifications when the new videos are posted. We will also have links to each video at the end of the videos so that you can follow them in order. Hello everyone, and welcome to the final video in our 4-part series of everything you need to know to get started with raising your chickens. Today we will be covering most of your common health care needs and potential issues that you might run into, the health issues, and how to identify them. Okay, so how do you know if you have a sick chicken or what kind of sickness you're dealing with? Most importantly, you're going to want to make sure you're checking in on your birds a couple of times a day. We like to check in on ours probably more than what's necessary, but the more often you're checking them out, the more likely you are to catch something before it's become a bigger issue. So you're going to want to interact and become familiar with your chickens. And yeah, if you have a chicken that's isolating and off by itself, and you know, they might be hunched up or fluffed up, and you know, they don't come out to eat when the treat bag comes out, you might be dealing with a sick bird. So your first thing is to identify that and catch that, and then the next thing is going to be try to figuring out what's going on with your bird. Now, chickens, we have found over 10 years, can have a multitude of issues. And a quick disclaimer, we are not veterinarians. Anything I discuss or any medications that we've used were treatments through our own experiences and things we dealt with firsthand. You are going to want to make sure you're consulting with a vet if you have a sick bird and you're not sure what's going on, or at the very least, your forums on social media where veterinarians can offer some kind of advice on how to deal with those issues. Vitamin and mineral deficiency is one of the more common issues that people face with their chickens. We tend to not run into too many of these issues. I actually haven't run into too many of them, but we do see on the forums and people asking when their chickens are faced with some of these issues. Wry neck, so the chicken can't hold its head up. That's a huge indicator that they are lacking in vitamin and mineral deficiency. General lethargy, listlessness, like, you know, just lack of energy is also a keen indicator that they may not be getting vitamin and mineral intake that's required for them. Again, if you have birds that are trapped inside or in a coop, they're going to be more susceptible to these issues. Oh, come here, girl. Did you get yourself down between there? There you go. Sorry about that. Anyway, so again, we haven't run into a lot of these. We tend to we try to take preventative measures and keep the birds as healthy as possible, but it does happen, especially if they're stuck in a coop, or during those long winter months when they're stuck indoors and they're not out free ranging. They're going to lack a lot of these vitamins and minerals. So you're going to want to make sure you have a good set of electrolytes on hand. You're going to want to make sure that you can start saving everything you cut off of your vegetables and all your meat scraps that you don't eat, obviously not the chicken, but any other meat scraps that you're not using when you make your stews or your barbecue or whatever. You put that stuff aside in a pail and feed it to your birds. It will help offset some of that lack of vitamin and mineral they're not getting when they're not out free ranging. I can't stress enough, free ranging is the best option for your birds. Obviously, the more natural of an environment that they can have, the better. Okay, another very general issue with chickens, and if you're going to have them free ranging especially, is worms and parasites. Now, there are multitudes of them. I'm not going to list them all. Some of the more common ones and the more dangerous ones are your intestinal ones and your gape worms. We'll go ahead and cover gape worm first. Now, this one's pretty easy to spot. The chicken will have their mouth open. They will be visibly showing signs of difficulty in breathing. The gape worms themselves are usually easy to see if you can get the chicken's mouth open. Unfortunately, not easily treated with your general worm and parasite medications. So to treat it, most of your worms and parasites can be treated. We use Safeguard. 1 pea-sized amount of this per bird. You could put it on a tiny piece of bread or a piece of corn. Ours love the corn. You're going to treat that. You're going to wait 10 to 14 days. And if it's still showing signs of infection, then you're going to treat again. Otherwise, 1 treatment sometimes does it if it's not a bad infestation. You're going to want to make sure you have some of this on hand if you've got free-range birds, and if they're exposed to the outside elements where there's other birds in the area coming in, they can easily contract parasites and worms. So keep some of this on hand and you will be better for it. You don't want to be scrambling to look for this if you all of a sudden discover you have a worm and parasite infestation. And always treat the flock. Don't just treat 1 bird. Oftentimes, if 1 is infected, the other ones have already become infected. The main ingredient in this one is the fenbendazole, and that one does treat almost all of your other worms and parasites, but also the gapeworm, which is the deadlier one. The next more common issue that we found with birds over the years is your varieties of lice and mites. Super easy to spot and know if you have an issue with it. The lice will they'll lay their eggs around the vent area of the chicken. So we talked about that. You'll want to familiarize yourself with the rear end of the bird where the eggs and the manure comes from, because that is where a lot of the health issues will also show their signs. So lice and mites can be pretty common if your coop gets a little too dirty, or if you've got wild birds interacting with your flock. And you're going to want to try and limit that as much as possible. Don't lock your birds up inside. Try to figure out ways to stop the wild birds from gaining access to your coop or gaining access to your run, because they will be carrying those things in higher concentrations. Make sure your roosts are kept clean. The mites will most commonly come from those areas. They'll get down into the cracks on your roosts and just, breed over time and get too infected. Even talking about it makes me itchy. Lice are super hard to see. They're kind of clear and tiny, but you can, the best indicator is their egg sacs, which you'll find around the base of the tail feathers. So if you're looking at the underside of the chicken, at the very base of the tail feathers, you'll see little clusters of white, spongy looking sacs. And those are an indicator that you've got a little bit of a lice infestation. Before you guys get too worried, if your birds do end up with these lice or mites or any of those things, most all of them are not transferable to humans or your other pets. Some quick and easy treatments. The lice, Dr. Doom, again, if you prevent, you don't have to use these chemicals. We try to prevent using chemicals as much as possible, but if you do run into a lice issue, this stuff is the bee's knees. It will clear it up right away. Again, treat all birds, not just the ones you find the issues with. And this stuff, you'll spray it all over the vent and under the wings of the bird. And you'll spray it on the surfaces inside the coop, and it will clear up that issue real quickly. So you'll want to make sure you keep some of this on hand for your lice and your mites. The mites are a little harder to see, but if you pull back the feathers, you might see little black dots kind of moving around. They tend to hang out in areas that are harder for the chickens to get at. So on their backs and underneath their, at the back sides of their wings and stuff. Again, you'll see them maybe scratching and excessively picking at areas. And if you look back, peel back the feathers and look, you might see those little black spots moving around. Again, Dr. Doom spray will take care of that. And there's also different varieties of like Scaly Mites that get up underneath the scales on the chicken's feet. It's really uncomfortable for them. And again, it commonly comes from the roosts. They get in there at night. They'll get under the scales. They'll breed, and it'll lift the scales. And really uncomfortable. So keep some Vaseline on hand. Any variety of petroleum jelly will work. You spread a little bit of this over the scales of their feet. It suffocates the mites, clears them right up. Again, clean the coop. If anytime you have an issue of any of these varieties, you're going to want to make sure you do a full clean of the coop. Make sure their food supply's up off the ground. Make sure their water supplies are up off the ground and clean. And you'll prevent a lot of these things. But the jelly will help. Also, good tip if you have your feathered feet varieties, which I don't have any running around right now, but your Brahmas and stuff, they molt. And this will help ease some of that irritation when they're molting those feathers on their feet. So if you've got those breeds running around, keep some of this on hand. And when they're molting, rub a little on there, and it'll kind of soothe that irritation that they get from putting in new feathers. Okay, I don't have a bag of it here to show you guys, but I want to talk about one very important compound to keep on hand in your chicken farm or your house, wherever you are. It doesn't matter. If you're going to keep chickens, DE, or diatomaceous earth. It is a supplement, more or less. It's a food grade, naturally occurring powder that the birds will actually bathe themselves in. So you're going to want to keep a nice little dirt bath around for them and keep this stuff sprinkled in. They will ingest it, and it is a great preventative for your parasites and your worms and different things. As they ingest it, it will pass through, and this stuff can actually be sprinkled onto the surface of your birds if they're dealing with lice and mites, and it does help kill a lot of those things off. All right, we've covered the three. Let's see. Oh, respiratory issues. Not as bad. Birds can live with respiratory issues like we do. It's shown mostly in sneezing, coughing, that kind of thing. If it gets excessive, you're going to want to check the condition of your coop. These girls put off a lot of their own dander, so if they're trapped inside for any length of time, they're going to create their own dust. Depending on what you're using for bedding and stuff, you might end up with a little bit too much dust in your coop. So you're going to want to make sure you keep that cleared out. If you do run into respiratory issues, they do make a product that we use called Vet RX. These are just natural herbs that are combined. You put them in some warm water, and it creates like a vapor, very similar to like a Vicks vapor rub. And it's really good. It helps open up their airways and break it up. Again, always, if you run into respiratory issues, do a full clean. Get your coop cleaned up, get everything cleaned up, get the food and water cleaned up, make sure everything's good and sanitized, and go ahead and treat them with this for a couple of days, and you'll see that clear up pretty quickly. And again, cleanliness and general maintenance is going to be important. These are only going to treat symptoms. They're not necessarily going to cure your animal. Part of curing the animal is preventing the problem. So keep your coop nice and clean. Try to let them out into the fresh air. Getting them out into the fresh air is the same. It does the same for them that it does for us. We might have allergies being stuck inside all winter long, but when you get out into the fresh air, you can feel your airways open up. Another common issue, some of your older birds, especially, when they get to the end of their egg-laying cycle, which is usually only a few years, inside 2 or 3 years, you might see an issue with egg bound. You might see a chicken where it looks like the egg's trying to pass and it's not. You absolutely don't want to interfere with that process, but you do want to try and treat it. Epsom salt baths, nice warm water with some Epsom salts will and soaking the bird down in it will help reduce some of that inflammation and help pass that egg. And can't stress enough, you don't want to try and force that egg out or interfere with the process in any way. You're going to want to just get that Epsom salt bath going and treat that way. So symptoms is the bird will get upright and kind of tensed up like a penguin, sort of, and it'll look like they're visibly straining to pass that egg. So quite uncomfortable for them, and it can kill them. Lash eggs, these are actually a sign of infection. Here in Canada, it's difficult to get the medications for those, so you'll want to talk to your local farm supply. If you're down in the States there, a lot of them are available over the counter, and it's just a quick dose, and then your chicken will be back to normal inside of a week or so. Okay, so for any of you that want to raise your own chickens from babies, which we tried a few years back, we got into, and super fun. And there is a parasite that generally only affects your younger birds that you're going to want to keep an eye out for. It does show up in bloody stools, and again, it mostly affects the younger babies. It's a coccodosis. The coccodosis symptoms in your chicks. So it's normal for them to pass their intestinal lining. If you see a little bit of blood in their stool, it's fine, normal. But if you see it consistently for a couple of days, and again, the bird is off by itself, it might be fluffed up or hunched, isolating, not eating, not drinking. It's a parasite that exists in the bird. It's just in the younger birds, if their immune system has been compromised, it can build up and create an issue for them. Otherwise, it's a parasite that the body naturally fights off, and you don't generally have to treat for it. It doesn't treat with your other safeguards and the anti-parasite and worm medications. You have to treat that with this Corid. Now, again, you're going to want to keep this on hand if you're raising baby chicks. Don't wait till you have the issue to try and find this stuff, because not all your farm supply stores source it. We had to go online to find this. You can find them on Amazon and other websites, farm supply, tractor supply kind of places. Will carry this in their inventory, but they may not have it in the store. And the coccidiosis it can kill them pretty quickly. Always follow the directions, the treatments on the back for the size of your bird and everything else. All the dosages are right there. So you got your baby chicks hatched. You're going to want to keep an eye on them early on, especially. Check their rear ends quite often. Make sure that they don't have any blockage. They call it pasty butt. It's basically just a buildup of poop. And you're going to want to be very careful and gentle when you're helping remove that for the bird. You're going to want to get some Q-tips and some warm water, maybe a warm or a soft cloth with some warm water, and you're going to want to wet the area and gently clean that off. They're almost massage it off. Don't just yank it or pull it. The birds are very fragile at that age, and you'll just want to be as careful as you can, but you're going to want to keep an eye on, because that can create some major health issues early on with the young chicks. And you will want to keep an eye on your older birds as well. They can start to develop issues with the same problem, so keep those bums clean. We want to share with you what we use as far as home remedies are concerned. We actually use this ourselves, or a variation of this ourselves, called fire cider, but we just call this magic water. And it's a quick, easy way to mix up some natural antibiotics for your birds. So if you've been dealing with sneezing or coughing or a sick bird or any type of illness, a good thing to treat with after you've treated them medicinally would be preventative. And this fire water or magic water is the best way to do it. Super easy to make. You can scale this however you want. This is a pretty scaled down version. A couple of cups of nice warm water. It's going to have to be warm enough to melt some honey. So you don't want it boiling necessarily if you're going to use it right away. About a tablespoon of honey. And we got about a tablespoon of organic apple cider vinegar. Now you want to make sure it's the organic. It does have the mother element in it, or the bacteria, the good healthy bacteria. That's going to help with digestion and clearing up parasites and worms and such. It's a very good preventative. And then just take a clove of garlic. You don't have to cut it up or get it too broken up. You just want to crush it so it releases. Get that into that warm water, and it'll leach into the water supply, and just get that good and mixed up, and let that sit there and let that garlic leach into that water. And then once you've got it good and incorporated and it sat for a few minutes and the honey's all good and melted, you can just pour this right into their water supply, or even set it down on its own, and they will drink from it. And again, it will help boost their immunity. Again, you want to make sure you're using the water with the apple cider vinegar so it thins it out and they're not getting concentrated versions. But yeah, if you treat with this, then you will help prevent a lot of those regular seasonal health issues or general health issues that your chickens are faced with on a regular basis. All right, so I did not cover every single thing or potentiality that can go on with chickens. There's just way too many of them to list. And I don't want anybody to get discouraged. These are just some of your common things. They're very easy to treat, very easy to spot. Some of the things we dealt with over the 10 years, some of them we didn't. You may not deal with any of them at all. If you practice good measures, even if you're doing everything you're supposed to, you may run into one of these issues. Genetics come into play with some of the birds, and immunity issues, and all kinds of other things that can come into play. So don't be discouraged, and always practice good measures. Now, I mentioned a lot of different things that we can treat these problems with. Preventative wise, don't just rely on the food from the stores to get all the nutrients and healthy things your birds need. Start to think naturally. Your pumpkin seeds are a really good thing. If you can source just regular hulled pumpkin seeds, throw them into your food. They are great anti-parasitic. Your organic apple cider vinegars in the water supply are great for their digestion, will keep their croup nice and clean, keep their digestive tracts nice and clean. Again, antiparasitic. You're going to want to, if you incorporate a lot of those things, you might find that you don't run into many of these issues at all. But health and diet are just like with people. Your health revolves around your diet, and with the birds it's the same thing. The healthier they're eating, the more stuff they have access to out in the wild, the healthier they'll be. The more time they spend out in the sun, the healthier they'll be. So don't be discouraged by all these things, and get yourself a kit, and you'll feel better for it, because a lot of these things we didn't have when we first started raising chickens, and each time we ran into one of these issues, we were kind of in a panic state because we didn't have what we needed to treat it. And we didn't know what we were treating. We didn't know what we were dealing with. So, and we're still doing it today. So it didn't discourage us. It shouldn't discourage you. And if you have any questions, we're not vets, but we will help you any way that we can. So drop them down in the comments there. We have a lot of great people in our comment section with a lot of helpful information that have been there with other people's questions to answer them. So please don't be afraid to reach out. Everybody starts off at some point with this process, just like we did 10 years ago, and we're still learning every day. So don't be discouraged. They're great pets. They're great animals to have around. Nothing better than producing your own eggs and meat if you want to do both. So yeah, thank you for watching, and hit subscribe if you want to see more content.